Thanks for those who are joining us this afternoon. We're just waiting for a few more people to join. People are coming into the webinar now. I'll slowly get started by welcoming everyone joining the PharmAust webinar today, hosted by myself, Daniel from JP Equity. We've followed this story now for a few years and going to continue to follow this exciting company who we believe will be at a commercialization stage in the not too distant future. There's a lot going on here. We have received a lot of questions over the past fortnight. So I have collated all of that and endeavoured to get to everyone as broadly as possible. So we've got a lot of information to take away from today. We are recording this as well, and we'll send out a recorded version. I just want to thank all board members who are here today. Roger, Richard, Sam, Robert, Neville, Colin from Epicam. Please welcome Roger.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Can we flick on to the first slide? There you go. Thank you for that. Look, by way of introduction, I'll speak to this first slide. And as Daniel has indicated, there's been a lot of questions come through. And I'll try to just touch on one or two of them during the course of this introduction. This introduction also gives some context to what we've been doing, and particularly if there's some new shareholders joining the call, it also gives some context as to what we're talking about, rather than just jump in with the patents or the efficacy and so on. So let me start off and basically say that the foundational patents, which we've had many questions about, were filed when we did the basic research. And that basic research was undertaken in Sydney at St. George's Hospital. And what we essentially demonstrated was that the pathway which Monapantel operates by is called mTOR. And this pathway basically controls the rate at which cells grow and replicate and metabolize. And as a result of that, as you can see a little bit below, we've diversified now into COVID and MND, motor neuron disease, because of this ability of mTOR to slow down protein synthesis and metabolism. But it goes deeper than that, in the sense that the FDA now demands some information on your mechanism of action at the end of the day. So we've serviced all our needs at the basic research level, and we've identified a broad spectrum drug which has many potential therapeutic targets. For us now, the challenge is to pick the right targets to get a registration quickly. With the safety side, that's fairly straightforward. We're repurposing an existing approved drug, and there's extensive information on the internet on the safety of this drug in a formalized manner. I did want to sort of mention a couple of points on the activity and efficacy, which are the two lines below. In the sense, we demonstrated the pharmacokinetics at the Royal Adelaide Hospital in man. We've also done the same sort of work in canines. And I've had the question on occasion of you're measuring stable disease in a lot of cases and promoting this as a good endpoint, and really questioning, is this the right endpoint? Well, in the ideal world, we'd like to show 100% tumor regression, but if we had that, we wouldn't be having this conversation today. What we have is good stable disease or progression-free survival in dogs with target lesions, something like 11 out of 15 dogs. So we're pretty happy with that, because it lends itself now to exploring overall survival in dogs and humans, and also looking at how to structure the trials as we go forward. So we have now in sight the commercialization of Monapantel, and there's a little bit of a delay as has stimulated many of the questions. We've got a phase 3 trial now aimed to start in Q1 22. But let's just take a moment, and I might invite Dr. Richard Mollard to comment a little bit on Syngene, and Catalan as regards the delay. And it really rests on supply chain issues that we encountered during the course of this year with the Chinese. Richard, can you say a couple of words?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Roger. And thank you to everybody for joining today, and JP Equity as well for hosting. With Syngene, we've been in constant dialogue with them since December about manufacturing. And we first became aware that maybe there could be some delays in April, but we didn't think it was going to be changing our scheduling. So I think a lot of people might look at monopantal, the molecule, and you can see that it's made out of different components, and for Syngene to manufacture it, they have to source raw materials. So they have to source small molecules and stick them together. And one of the raw materials, the key one, with a cyanide group sitting on it, which is actually very safe and it has no bearing of cyanide that you might think of. But it's manufactured as a raw material in China, and we had to have 40 kilograms of that made. So with coronavirus restrictions in China, the Chinese authorities shut down all of the factories, so there was a delay. And we were aware of this, and Syngene was putting in contingency plans. Then the factories opened up again. And because of this cyanide group and the large quantities required, the Chinese government decided to do an environmental audit, which again caused a delay. And we were aware of this, but still expected to have monopantal manufactured in time for clinical trials to start this year. So then once they passed the environmental audit, and Syngene have been doing a fantastic job, by the way. They've been setting up parallel manufacturing processes with partner companies in India so that they can get things going faster all the time and try to claw back some of these delays. And the Chinese factory finally made the raw material and sent the specifications to Syngene in late June. And Syngene analysed them and thought, well, look, you know, it's not quite pure enough for what we want for PharmAust GMP manufacturing runs. So they asked them to go back and re-purify. And finally, the 40 kilograms of this raw material arrived on site in Syngene at the start of July. So we then went about and had to reshuffle all of our downstream suppliers to get the tablets made. And this involved negotiating with Catalent. If you've been reading the announcements, you'll see we're making a smaller tablet compared to the normal sized tablet for the motor neuron disease trial, because we suggest we need lower dosing to start with. So they have to do demonstration batch runs of tablets and book them in. And then from the demonstration batch runs, they do the scale tablet manufacturing as well. So we became aware of all of this and had our program finalised in early July, and we updated the market with these now pretty much solid timelines as soon as possible.
Thank you for that, Richard. I might try to finish up on this slide by saying that we have started exploratory commercial discussions with companies. We're not at a stage yet to report anything to the market. And these discussions, of course, will carry on as we go into phase 3 registration. And I'm referring in particular, of course, here to the phase 3 trial in Q1 22 for treating canines with cancer. And of course, how we position it is something that we will do between now and January. In other words, do you use it before current standard of care, or do you use it after standard of care, and so on. So there's still some tweaking for us to do to put the odds in our favor, shall we say, in terms of getting the trial optimal. if we can go then now to the next slide, which is also the first question, I think.
Yes.
And I might address myself to this first by saying that in about 2012, 2013, we filed the first of our patents, and you can see the use of aminoacetonitriles, of which monopantel is one, was filed in, will go out until 2032. And that's similar for the use of aminoacetonitriles operating through mTOR pathway. There's dozens, if not hundreds, of aminoacetonitriles. Of course, we haven't got the opportunity to test them all, but we have tested quite a number of them for anti-cancer activity. And that patent relates to other analogs, shall we say, or variants of MPL. The third one down is the use of MPL in combination with other cancer drugs. And this is kind of important, especially when you're trying to drop a new drug into a market which has got hundreds and hundreds of drugs for treatment of cancer. You know, where to position it in all of that. It's important to have tested combinations to see where you get the best synergy. And that one expires in around 2034. I may be a year up or down, but we're talking of still good runways for commercialization. The next one is the MPL in other analogs. So we had the structure of some 50 analogs from a Japanese company called Nihon Nokyaku, who delivered this particular structure, and those run out to 2034. And of course, we've disclosed to the market that we've secured IP for COVID-19. And that's recent, relatively recent. So we've got a very good runway there to 2040. So we've had the question also, are we sitting on our laurels waiting for the patent owned by a major vet company, which expires, it starts to expire in the majority of territories in 2024. Are we waiting for that to expire before we move forward? And the answer, of course, is categorically no. We're going to proceed with the phase 3 trial imminently. We have some more tweaking to do at the moment. And of course, we'll reach out to Vet Major, who we don't like to use their name, but it's all in the announcements. Anyone can find out. But we'll reach out to them at the right time, as they have been extremely helpful to us. And they do still, of course, have the dossier for the drug, which we may wish to access at some stage. So at worst, I see a situation where we will approach them long before 2024 and say, give us a license, and we'll pay you a royalty for the 1 or 2 years moving towards 20 to 24. So that really summarizes that we're very comfortable as a company with our IP position. It's very strong. It's got good runway. And what's out there is, which impedes us, is running out of runway very soon, in a couple of years. And we will be ready to go.
Yeah, okay. Thanks a lot, Roger. You've nailed quite a few of the questions, I guess, there around delays and patents. Just a quick one here, which we've received quite a little bit over the past week. Are there alternative, suppliers, manufacturers you can approach? I guess, like for example, could Epichem assist?
Yes, I'm happy to answer that question. Richard is the expert, of course, on providers, but maybe if I give it a stab and he can correct me if I'm
that'd be great. And even Colin can
off the mark. Basically, many companies can make this product, but we've worked with Syngene for a long time. They've established the procedures. We're very happy with the quality of the product. It's a different procedure to that which is used for the current Zolvix product by Vet Major. And our preference is to stick with the devil we know than trying a new company, which we don't know whether they'll be able to make it or whether there'll be issues. It is a reasonably straightforward synthesis, but it does use, as you heard from Richard, 40 kilograms of a cyanide product to make the intermediates. So as such, everything's in place that works. We hope we won't get more delays out of China in terms of supply chain. The government there has done their inspections. Hopefully those will take us through to where we want to go.
Yeah.
So Epichem, on the other hand, I don't think at this stage they can do it. They're not fully GMP certified, so we'll stick with Syngene for the time being. And yes, we do have a bit of a delay as a consequence of this, but it's only a short delay, in the scheme of things. And we do have other things to do in terms of increasing our chances of success in the phase 3 in terms of tweaking. So very comfortable with where we are.
Richard mentioned that Syngene have the raw materials. What was the expected month of completion?
Richard?
Oh, okay. So what Syngene is doing is previously they developed a method for us, which Roger illustrated as different to other methods available. So it's unique to PharmAust, and we did that to a 100-gram scale. So they have to make 10 kilograms of GMP. So first of all, they make a 500-gram demonstration batch to show they can scale it. And this is due for completion probably the start of September. So it's coming up pretty soon. And I have weekly meetings with them. And if you can imagine, maybe there's 10 or 20 steps to make the molecule. They're up to the last one, and they're doing that this week. And they're doing what they call stress tests on each week. So this on each step. So this is part of the quality control. So after they've done this 500 grams, they will then scale to the 10 kilograms of GMP grade monopantal. And they're predicting this will be ready by early October.
Okay, cool. And another question just on GMP. Why does the MPL need to be GMP for phase 1 human trial?
Yeah, so it's a regulatory requirement from the FDA. A lot of people think it's not required, but everybody can look up the regulations. They're called 21C for parts 201 and 211. And you need good quality control for making drugs that will go into humans. So there are actually different levels of GMP. And for late stage trials, you need absolutely complete GMP. For our stage, as I said, maybe there are 10 or 20 steps. The first couple of steps don't have to be GMP, but the subsequent ones do, or you can finish with a crystallization step to full GMP to show GMP and good quality control to the regulators. So by doing things to GMP, it's risk mitigation. We don't want to go to the regulators and say, oh, we would like to register monopantal as an anti-cancer therapy. And they say, where is your portfolio? We say here, here's our phase 1 data. Where is your drug master file? Here it is. Oh, why did you not use GMP here? Oh, well, we don't have a reason. They absolutely require good quality control, and that's what we're doing.
Yeah, okay. And just on around delays that I guess have been frustrating for PharmAust and I guess followers of the company. Why has there been a delay commencing the phase 3 canine trial? Is it using existing MPL tablets?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer this one as well. So the delay is actually quite fortuitous, and it's worked out in PharmAust's favour. So we originally had Claire Cannon as principal investigator on the clinical trials for the phase 2 trials. And she was brilliant with setting up a highly academic, perfectly set up phase 2 trial where we have clear endpoints. We have absolutely rigorous testing. We do imaging, we do x-rays, ultrasound, we do all the blood work. And if we say the dog has stable disease or a partial response, you can guarantee that it does according to all veterinary oncology group requirements. Unfortunately, the University of Melbourne has gone through a massive restructuring because of the COVID-19 shutdowns. And what that meant is there's been a lot of staff rationalisation, and Claire thought that her best opportunity was with a private enterprise, a new veterinary practice. And so she's moved to a new veterinary practice and is doing very well there, but they don't have time or bandwidth to do clinical trials because they have a different business model. So PharmAust reached out, and this is why I say it's fortuitous. We were able to hire Kim Agnew, who has a massive amount of experience in big pharma. He's worked for Merrill, he's worked for Boehringer Ingelheim and for Elanco in exactly the stage of development for phase 3 trials and into commercialization. So he's having the dialogue with these companies, being updated what they're all looking for at the moment. He's reanalyzed the data, and I agree with him. I think we can optimize the dose a little bit better to make it a more attractive package. So he's recommended we try a few more doses just so we can increase our value proposition for any future licensing partner. At the same time, we're looking to bring more arms into the clinical trial. So originally we thought, look, we'll just do 1 or 2 or 3 with prednisolone, but now we're thinking about looking with standard of care chemotherapy as well and extending the reach of the phase 3 trial. So I'm confident it's going to be a much better trial, and there's been a little bit of a delay, but I think it's been a good delay for the company and the shareholders.
Yeah, okay. So just with the, I guess, the activity timeline, the slide that we can see here, plenty of questions around that activity timeline. We've got sort of 4 trials, I guess, facing us here. Can we just elaborate on the 4? Obviously got K9, Fight MND, COVID and human. Can we just touch on the activity timeline?
Yeah. So the first one up, you can see Q1 phase 3 pet dog cancer trial. So this is what we're aiming for at the moment. And you can imagine, say we get a nice licensing deal, which we're trying to accomplish. And this licensing partner says, look, we want to change direction and do this. So at the moment, we're looking at Q1, and that is our plan for now. The next one is the Fight MND, which is contingent upon the monopantal being manufactured in Syngene and then tablets being made at Catalent. And we're looking for this to start in Q2, Q3 next year. Syngene are really doing their best to try and bring things forward. We'll see what happens, but there's no guarantees on that at the moment. Originally, we were going to do COVID-19 trial after the Fight MND trial because we thought it was most cost effective to get good pharmacokinetic data first with the Fight MND group and know what we're going to do with the COVID group. But the shareholders and the board, I think, are quite keen to bring that COVID-19 trial through a bit earlier. So we'll plan to set that up at the same time and do a dose escalation. So this means we've pushed the cancer trial a little bit back as well so that we can have good pharmacokinetics from the COVID-19 trial, the Fight MND trial, so we know exactly what dose we're putting into humans. We can match that with the original Zolvix trial that we did at the Royal Adelaide Hospital. We can match that with the efficacy trial data that's coming out of the dog work and go into that in the best shape possible as well. So the timelines here are the most efficient for the company at this stage.
Okay, cool. And I just had a quick question from an investor. Has the ethics, have PharmAust applied for ethics approval for the human trial?
So we were extremely pleased to have ethics for the Fight motor neuron disease because any trial can fall over if ethics say look, I'm sorry, you can't do it unless you do A, B, C, D, E. So we've had an absolutely fantastic outcome for the company, showing the ethics groups how safe monopantal is and how well we can construct these trials. We haven't started ethics applications for the other trials yet, because typically you commence these about 6 months out, and always the expectation and the timelines were we would do COVID next and then cancer and so forth. But now we're setting in stage, getting preparations together for ethics for a COVID-19 trial. And we can do this very confidently now. We've got our 3 data sets from independent groups throughout the world looking at how monopantal may act on coronavirus infections, and can make some very good hypotheses about how monopantal may work and how it may complement other drugs that are coming into the market at the moment. So how we set up the clinical trial, we're working on that at the moment. We've actively engaged clinical research organisations to help us set this up, and these conversations are ongoing, and we'll identify clinicians and we'll update the market once we have these protocols sorted out.
Yeah, okay. So I guess just touching on that and partnerships. Has PharmAust spoken to any global animal healthcare companies?
Roger, would you like to take these questions?
Yes, I mean, I can tackle that one. I mean, we have had dialogue. Of course, we've had an option agreement with the vet major company for a couple of years, and we would certainly talk to them as well as we move forward. Kim Agnew, who's joined us and has worked with a lot of the major veterinary companies around the world, has already opened up some dialogue. What kind of dialogue? Trying to understand what they're looking for: early stage, late stage, something to use with standard of care, something to stand alone. So this is how you start off these discussions, is to find out what your customer really wants, and then make sure that you design your trials to address the product at the end of the day. So yes, we're moving ahead, and this is going to be ramped up, I'm sure, early next year.
I'd like to just jump in there, Dan, on that. And in terms of listing rule 3.1, continuous disclosure, there's an exemption to the obligation to disclose. And basically, if there's an incomplete proposal that's being worked up in a confidential setting with another party, there's no obligation to disclose. So that's where we're at. So we don't have any obligation to disclose it. We are in discussions, and at the appropriate time that will be disclosed.
Okay, no problem. Look, that brings me to another question I've got a few of. You probably can't elaborate here, but we are being asked, can you elaborate on discussions you've had with pharmaceutical companies like Pfizer, Elanco have been previously named? It's a probably tough one to answer, but yeah, I've been asked to ask it.
Well, we can't. That was basically, I just answered that. Yeah, we're unable to, mate, at the moment.
Okay, moving on to one we've just had in here. Has PharmAust applied for, I guess, funding from the Australian government in relation to COVID trials?
We have not yet, and again, we've looked into this. Richard has certainly looked up what is available from the Australian government. Richard, have you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, sure. So thanks, Roger. And we keep abreast of what funding arrangements there are from the government. And people ask about fast tracking, and that's all possible, but we have to align this with having tablets ready to go into the clinic. So for PharmAust's value proposition, it's very important to set up a good intellectual property profile which is secure for the shareholders. And we've done that as of May, June this year, where we made that announcement that we have filed our antiviral patent, which we made the application for 1 year earlier, but you have to keep it under wraps. You don't disclose that you've done this until after 1 year. And when you're writing grant applications, you need supporting data. And of course, we've had that, but we've wanted to keep that secure as well. You never understand what leaks may happen during funding review processes or anything. So it's 6 or 7 weeks later now, and we're setting up for clinical trials. We've established a new antiviral program with WeHi, which is going to increase our patent portfolio for COVID-19, HTLV1, and other viruses for monopantal. And we'll be looking for funding to support us in due course. I mean, interestingly enough, there was one of interest that came out this morning, but I'll discuss that with the board, and it's a strategic decision based on where you are at. And we'll definitely keep abreast of all of that.
Okay, thanks a lot for that. Just on some EpiChem questions I've got here for Colin. We've just got one. How efficient is the flow reactor regarding energy input compared to fuel delivered? So if you can elaborate.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Daniel, and good afternoon, everyone. If you could just move to the next slide, Daniel, for me.
Oh, yes, sorry.
That's okay. So, so before I answer that question, for members of the audience today that aren't aware of our novel disruptive technology known as oxidative hydrothermal dissolution, or as we refer to it as OHD, this is the ability to convert biomass and feedstock into valuable end-user products. So if I just take a step back and remind, there's probably 3 buckets that we'll be playing in here: the ability to convert waste and i.e. make it go away, stop it ending up in landfill, and then it's like what I would describe in layman's terms, unbaking a cake, where we give back the natural or major ingredients of waste that has a revenue generating or market potential. So before I answer your question, Dan, I just wanted to alert the audience to that photo in the bottom, the left-hand corner of the slide is actually EpiChem's benchtop flow reactor, now situated in our laboratory here at Technology Park in Bentley. And that's Dr. Suren Bok, who is the project lead for this project. So I think in terms of the milestone that we needed to achieve first is to build a benchtop flow reactor that we could then test a series of biomass and feedstock. I think we've achieved that in line with expectations. But in terms of efficiency, very efficient. A scaled up version would make a better use of the energy required for the process, both in terms of heating and pressure through predominantly recycling. The amount of energy released will depend on the feedstock and conditions. So what I mean by that is how much we let react based on what is the product that we're trying to determine. The potential fuel coming out of a reactor will be processed. The water needs to be removed, and what we do know is that because the reactor just requires electricity to run the pumps, the heating and the control systems, from that perspective, it can definitely run on renewable energy such as solar and wind as well.
Okay, no problem. And so that can be produced locally, like as you pointed out here. Just a question that's come through.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, well, there's no reasons why it can't.
Okay. Just still on EpiChem. Can it run on that OHD reactor? Can it run continuously?
So on an industrial scale, it will be possible to design a continuous flow reactor for most of the processes, right? The only processes that we may need to run in batch form is what we call the leaching processes. So, it's when you literally have to throw in a whole tire and then run a batch formation if required to move the products through flow and to completely charge the chamber with new tyres afterwards. But the short answer is yes.
Yeah, okay. And just another one for you, Colin. Can you put them, like you just said, like a tyre, can you put all like types of plastics in at once, or how does that work?
Oh, look, in terms of a scaled up unit, the answer is yes. So when we're using a benchtop flow reactor, we'll actually use small fractions to allow those fractions mixed with water and oxygen, high temperature, high pressures to actually flow through our benchtop flow reactor. But ultimately, in a scaled up industrial version, yes, you could put a whole product, say like a tyre. We would be able to convert all the organic matter in a tyre, and any steel within those tyres will be separated out as part of that process.
Yeah, okay. And then just, I guess, comparing Epichem to the newly listed Delirium. And then there's another company, Sweetman Renewables. Can you please explain how this differs to them?
Yeah, sure. No, good question, Dan. So all of this technology has a place. Let me start by saying that, but they're all very different. So for example, if you look at Epichem's OHD technology, will be much more novel, innovative, and disruptive technology. And what I mean by that, if you look at some of the technology involved in DeLorean around anaerobic digestion, that was probably discovered about 1776. And the biomass gasification process that encompasses Sweetman was probably discovered around 1807. So these processes have been around a long time and well established. So I think for the audience, I think if I understand the question correctly around what are the major comparisons and differences. Yeah. First of all, we think that the OHD technology from Epichem will have greater applications across a greater number of sectors, a much broader footprint. Different feedstocks will provide us with greater flexibility of the end user products. I think that's well established. And we'll have greater control of the outcome and the composition of the process. We also, the OHD technology won't convert to a gas. And we have very low to no carbon dioxide production as well of our technology. The other thing is the OHD technology does not require a catalyst. And what I mean by that is what that means is we won't have any emission issues at the other end. And I think one of the greatest differences is the ability to utilise chemicals produced rather than burning them off. So if I look at the anaerobic bacterial process used by DeLorean, what they'll do is it's based on anaerobic digestion of a biomass. So basically that bacteria is destroyed by the biomass to produce a biogas, and that's mainly methane. And that then gets burnt in a regular gas burner with a turbine to produce electricity. So very much anaerobic biomass to a biogas process, if I was to simplistically talk about the DeLorean model. And also from the point of view is we're not aware in terms of how it would handle non-biological materials like plastics, for example. If I then turn my attention to Sweetman, so Sweetman is what we would call a biogas gasification process, followed by a conversion of the gas products into hydrogen. From what I understand from Sweetman, they tend to want to use sawmill dust, and then convert that sawmill dust through a water gas shift reaction into potential hydrogen fuel. So, some of the things we've often thought about is if you want to fuel cars, for example, in Australia, purely on hydrogen, will there be enough sawmill dust to be able to do that sustainably? Just a question to pose. But, there's nothing to say that they might not have the ability to use different feedstocks. But I think if you go back a slide, Dan, just in the presentation, I think I wanted to highlight about the OHD technology using liquid water, molecular oxygen, high temperature, high pressure. It's quite a simple technology. It's novel, it's new, it has a lot of potential applications we've talked about. I think the ability to convert at very high recovery rates of 70-90% is going to be beneficial as we learn more about the technology. It's environmentally friendly, as I talked about. It produces very little CO2, and it has no problematic emissions. Even the conversion factor. So we're talking about some of this technology requires, say, hours or days for conversion. The OHD technology will convert a biomass feedstock through the reactor to a potential end user product in minutes or seconds from that perspective. So I think there's some distinct advantages, but obviously the existing technology is well determined and well established. And obviously from an OHD perspective, we're still in the research and development and very novel phase.
Yeah, thanks. So look forward to following the rapidly growing biofuel space. So really appreciate the in-depth update there. I'm just going to move now to some other, I guess, financing questions, Sam, which I think you probably best to help me out with here.
Sure.
Back in 2019, and we participated here as JP Equity. We did do a capital raise for phase 2 trials in regards to cancer. Is there still enough funds for these, or will another raising be needed?
Yeah, good question, Dan. There is still enough capital for the phase 2 trial. We've budgeted $900,000 for the trial, so we're adequately funded. Probably worth also noting again, Richard talked about it a little bit earlier, that Fired MND are funding the phase 1 MND trial to the tune of about 900 grand. And that means if PharmAust starts their MND trial first, some capital for the cancer trial can be placed in a more advanced phase 2 trial, where starting dose based on the PK data from the MND trial will be already known.
Okay, yeah, no, thanks for that. Obviously, yeah, we've been following it for a while now. So just in regards to all of the clinical trials, do you believe it's all funded, or will we have to go back to the market?
Yeah, no, definitely. The last quarterly released a couple of weeks ago, we reported bank balance of approximately just over $3 million. We've received a further 380 grand in July from DNDi. It becomes largest customer. Of course, we haven't received any funding from the 900 grand committed from Fired MND yet. The first instalment of around 200 grand is due to be received after GMP manufacture of MPL. So certainly we're adequately funded for all of our clinical trials, mate.
Thanks for that. Look, it's obviously as broad as I can here. Did you want to just finish off, Roger?
You're on mute, Roger.
Just on mute.
Am I online now?
Yep.
Sorry about that, folks. I was just saying thank you to JP for setting all this up. Much appreciated, and thanks especially to the shareholders and for the excellent questions. From my perspective, I think we've reached an important crossroads or point in time as regards PharmAust. I mean, we've been working hard since 2013 when we backdoored the company, and we can now see the commercialization aspects inside, and really quite transformational programs coming up over the next 6 to 9 months, I think. We've got the dog trial, which is going to start early in Q1 next year. We'll have our manufacturing done and tablets done by then for both the veterinary, available for both veterinary and human studies as we move forward. And of course, we've got 3 human trials, the cancer, the COVID, and the MND trials coming up next year for evaluation. And I think any of those 3 trials showing a meaningful advantage for the marketplace will have massive effects on the share price. So I think exciting times looming. We wish they could be sooner, but better to go steadily with a secure footing rather than try to race through. So I'm patiently looking forward to what's going to happen. I don't think I have much more to say other than thanks again.
No, thanks a lot, and we really appreciate you know, the board engaging with us for an update. There's obviously a lot going on, so yeah, thanks again, and appreciate your time.